Day and welcome to another one of my live stream lectures. And before we get into today's lecture, I just want to take a moment to thank all of my supporters and everyone for supporting my channel. You know, my YouTube channel truly would not be where it's at today without all of my supporters. So with that being said, let's get on down to today's lecture, which is don't let your federal student loan go into default. Do not let your federal student loan go into default, and there's many reasons why. First of all, you know, if your student loan goes into default, that's going to be reported to all of the major credit bureaus, Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. You know, just like your federal student loan balance shows up on your credit report, if you go into default on that federal student loan, it's going to show that you stop making payments on that student loan, and it would have catastrophic damage to your credit score. This is real talk, people, and you really need to think about that. Because most importantly, your credit score plays a role with many areas of your life. You know, your credit score plays a role into, you know, there's certain jobs that they run your credit score. I don't care what kind of credentials or experience you have. You know, if one of the prerequisites to get that job is you got to have a certain credit score, and they run your credit score and it's horrible, you will not get that job. You know, to join the military, they run your credit score. You know, many times, even after you get a job with certain companies, you get a promotion. In order to get that promotion, they got to run your credit score. You know, to get car insurance at the best rate, they are running your credit score. You know, to purchase a home or even to get into an apartment, they are running your credit score. You know, so your credit score has a direct impact on so many areas of your life. You know, even to get certain type of insurance, medical insurance, life insurance, they are running your credit score. And if your credit score is low, that's going to block you from all of those things that I just mentioned, people. And also, now, you know, the federal student loan is nothing to play with. You know, if you go default on that federal student loan, yes, they can garnish your wages. The federal government can garnish your wages. They can garnish your income tax return, people. This is real talk. And I tell anyone, you know, the federal student loan forgiveness program still exists. You know, the remaining balance of my federal student loan, because I was in that loan forgiveness program, the remaining balance of my federal student loan was forgiven August of 2023, and I met all of those requirements for the remaining balance of my federal student loan to be forgiven. And when I was alerted by Mohelo, which is the service provider, that once I met all of those requirements, that 120 payments, you got to be working for a qualified employer. When I met all of those requirements, and they sent me a piece of paper saying the remaining balance of your federal student loan in the amount of $72,000 was wiped out, people. So that meant that was $72,000 I did not have to pay once I met all of those requirements. And once the remaining balance of my federal student loan was wiped out, because historically, if I would have checked on my credit report with Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, it showed that I owed $72,000, but I was in that loan forgiveness program. So when I met all those requirements and the remaining balance of my federal student loan of $72,000 was zeroed out, Mohelo, who is the school loan service provider, they alerted Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian that I had met all of the requirements of that loan forgiveness. So now, when I check my credit report with those major credit bureaus, Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, and now it reflects 0, 0, 0 versus $72,000. And when that bill was zeroed out, what that did was it shot my credit score up well over 800. My credit score It's been running 849, 850 now for going on 2 years. So imagine for a moment if I would have went default on that federal student loan, that outcome would have been a whole lot different. So, many people are, coming on these social media platforms talking about, yeah, I'm going to not pay my federal student loan. Let me tell you something. First of all, there are so many employers in this world who participate in the loan forgiveness program once you get a job with them. So many jobs, hospital jobs, private sector jobs, county jobs, state jobs, federal jobs, school systems. There are so many qualified employers. Once you get a job with them and you now have met the major criteria of working for the qualified employer, then of course you got to contact MOHELA, the service provider, to go through those other steps to enroll in that program. And one of the caveats to that program is you apply for income-driven based payment, so your federal student loan will be amount affordable based on your income, and all of the other perks that go along with that as you go through that process to meet those criterias for the remaining balance of your federal student loan to be zeroed out. I have many personal friends who also met the criteria. The remaining balance of their federal student loan has been zeroed out. I have a personal friend, the remaining balance of her federal student loan was $70,000+. Hers got forgiven before mine, but I know many other people who benefited from going through the appropriate steps to be in the federal student loan forgiveness program. And once all those criteria have been met, the remaining balance was zeroed out. This is real talk. People need to slow down and they need to go to the source. MOHELA is the service provider for the federal student loan. Slow your behind down and go to the source and go through the steps to enroll in that program so you can address your federal student loan versus not paying it and going into default on your student loan. And it's going to have a negative impact on so many areas of your life. Your paycheck can be garnished. Your income tax can be garnished. Even if you are getting Social Security and still got a school loan, and you stop making that payment, yes, they can garnish your Social Security. The federal government, they're going to get their money. So it would make sense to go through the steps to enroll your behind into the federal student loan forgiveness program. And once you have met all of those criteria, get the remaining balance of your federal student loan zeroed out. And I talked about that process way back then when I wrote my book titled Awake Financial Freedom. There's a chapter in my book, Awake Financial Freedom, where I literally wrote about how one of the best decisions financially that I made was to enroll my behind into the federal loan forgiveness program, because I came up with a game plan that I was going to be debt-free years before I retired. I retired September 2023, but I was debt-free years before I retired. And many of the things that I did, that I talk about to become debt-free, because when I was living in financial destruction from 2007 to 2012, I talked about my spiritual battle with God in this book. And I talk about how in 2012, God gave me the skills to master my money, to control my money, and the rest is history. If you have not checked out my power, I still use my same book, Awake Financial Freedom, to sustain my financial health, people. It's a powerful thing to live debt-free. And what I mean by debt-free, I mean I have no credit card bills. I have no school loan. I have no mortgage. I have no car note. I have no truck note. I have no personal loans. I have no store credit cards. I have no outstanding debt in any shape, form, or fashion, people. The only bills that I have in the world is my food, utilities, and my cell phone bill. That is power. No one could have ever told me, and I talk about my financial destruction in this book. This book is a spiritual testimony. I think in chapter 1, I talk about my financial destruction. You know, I was one of those folks living from paycheck to paycheck, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. You know, at one point in my life when I was at my all-time financial low, and I talk about this in my book, you know, my car note was 5 months behind, people. I don't know why Honda didn't take that car. But God has his hands all over me. But when I got tired of living like that, when I awakened my financial freedom, when I had that spiritual awakening, God gave me the skills to write this book. God gave me the skills to rise above my financial destruction. And he gave me the skills to transform and to be able to exit up out of this workforce, retire with a couple of pensions hitting me for the rest of my life, debt-free, people. And I did not learn any of this in graduate school. I got 2 master's degrees. Only thing college taught me was how to get in debt. The only thing college taught me was how to amass massive credit card debt. That's the only thing college taught me. It took me going through financial destruction from 2007 to 2012 and had that spiritual battle with God in 2012. And that's when the transformation of Marie Holiday occurred. So I tell people, do not let your federal student loan go into default, because back then when I was living in financial destruction, I had a federal student loan. But one of the things I did, because I knew I was not able to pay that federal student loan, I contacted the service provider and I asked them to put my federal student loan into deferment because of financial hardship. Because if you tell them to put it in deferment versus it going into default, because if my federal student loan would have went into default, even though I was messed up financially, that would have dug my hole deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And I talk about this in one of the chapters of my book. And I'm telling you, but I also enrolled into the federal student loan forgiveness program, and that was the best financial decision I made. So when my loan, the remaining balance of my federal student loan was forgiven in August of 2023, the rest is history. And this program still exists, but you got to go through the steps, people, to enroll in the program. You know, people really need to slow down and go to the source and handle their business. Real talk, people. Versus, you know, just throwing the towel in and you're making a situation worse and worse and worse. Because like I said, your credit score has an impact in all areas of your life. It has an impact on getting jobs. You know, it has an impact on whether you're going to get the best interest rates when you're trying to get car insurance, a house, or a vehicle, or any kind of mortgage. They're running your credit score. And yes, they can garnish your wages if you let your federal student loan go into default. So share this information. Somebody might need to hear this information. That's all I have. Simple Fidelity, and I'm going to leave you in the care of your own conscience. Have a great day.